Hi, I'm Marcus Trice, and I'm going to do a video response for FTT 201-6586 firearms finishes and engravings. So, for this assignment, there are a couple of questions, and it says review this week's content focused particularly on the topic of the steels used in the various types of firearms. The content of this week's discussion, alloys used in firearms. Also research a type of steel alloy that is used in common firearms that have been produced within the last 50 years. And reflect how does the type of steel used in the firearms affect the overall length of the service life. And have the manufacturing processes of the modern era enabled gun makers to produce a high quality firearm that will serve the first serve the test of time, and also you can include anything that we have read, I guess, in as far as coatings. So I gave it a lot of thought, and real quick, it's an interesting topic, and it's an important topic, especially for this particular class, because if you're going to do refinishing, you really need to know what you're refinishing, the type of metal it is, and what it's made up of. You know, is it steel? Is it an alloy? Is it stainless steel? Is it aluminum? And all of those affect the way that, or to affect the type of coating that you're going to actually put on that particular firearm. So I have chosen to kind of pick an actual firearm that incorporates different types of metals. And I think it's pretty unique, even though it's a common rifle, and that is the AR-15. If you look at that particular rifle, it's old enough, it meets a lot of the criteria for this particular assignment, but it's an interesting rifle because you have different types of metals and alloys. You have, and I've got a couple of notes here for you, but just as a catch-up, I guess, steel is an iron with enough carbon in it to allow it to be hardened. So so the steel is hard enough. You have too much carbon in it, it becomes brittle, and that's a bad thing. Steel can be alloyed or blended with other metals such as nickel, chromium, and tungsten. There are numbers associated with metals when you're thinking about firearms. There are 4 types of gun metals. There's 1060, 4140, 5150. There's actually 4150 too. And they designate how much of which element is added to them. So, like the first number, so let's say the 4140 and 4150, it indicates its carbon, nickel, or chromium content, or what it is. And then the next 3 numbers after that will tell you how much of each one is in it. So barrels for the AR, for example, and this is why I'm choosing the AR, because the barrels, there's 3 different types of metals that they can be made of, or stainless steel, and then the 2 different types of steel, the 4140 and then the 4150. Of course, there's a debate about that. 4140, actually the 4150 is probably a little bit more durable, and so people say, well, you want the more durable, but then maybe it's harder to work with, maybe it's not as forgiving, maybe it's a little bit more brittle. So that's an argument, or do you go towards the stainless steel? And that's a totally different conversation. But it's funny that some of these alloys have been around from the 1920s, and they were first started using them in aircraft design, things like that. And also automobiles, and then also rifle barrels. So what are the differences between like 4140 and 4150? Well, it's the carbon in it. There is about 0.5% more carbon in 4150. So that's an extra 0.1%, makes the 4150 alloy so much harder, but again, more difficult to work with compared to the 4140. How much more difficult? I'm not a machinist, but I'm sure a machinist would probably tell you that a 4150, with that, because it's harder and more brittle, is probably harder to work with. Let's see, also, another steel used in the AR barrels, is another steel that's used in the actual AR, is when it comes down to the bulk carrier group, and it's made out of 158 carpenter steel. And I believe it's made by, the formula comes from the Carpenter Manufacturer Corporation, I think it is. And it's like a secret blend, but it's become the military spec for the bulk carrier groups. So now you're looking at 4140 or 4150 in the steel in the barrels, and now you're looking at another different whole blending of metal, the 158 in the bulk carrier group. Also, as I touched on real quick, that you have stainless steel, and so you have a stainless steel barrel, and the stainless steel. So you have a couple of different stainless steels designations. The most common ones are the 400, the 416, and I think it's the 400 and the 416 are very popular because it's easy to machine. Because stainless steel, again, because of the way that it is, it's a harder metal. What's interesting about the stainless steel, I guess it was developed before World War I. You know, when you think about it, you think stainless steel is something relatively new. When you think of like appliances, well, I've got a stainless steel refrigerator, stove. But anyway, so it was made, it was invented before World War I, and it's the reason why you would use it in a rifle, or I'm talking about the AR, but even in handgun barrels too, is for the rust-resistant qualities of it. And what's interesting, I thought that stainless steel was through and through, but it turns out that stainless steel, it's rust resistant, however, not because there is so much chromium mixed in with it, but the chromium is more elevated to the surface, and it reacts to the air, and it creates a passive layer of chromium oxide, which is the rust inhibitor, which seals the iron from oxidation. So I really thought that you know, it was through and through, but I guess it's not. I actually have some firearms that are made from stainless steel. They have stainless steel slides and so forth, but they can still rust, and that's fascinating to me because I really truly thought that stainless steel was impervious to rust, but maybe not. Let's see, so also we've got a couple of other things in here. When you think about the AR lower and the AR upper, now we're talking about an aluminum alloy. And so there's a couple of different aluminum alloys used, the 7075 and the 6061. The 6061 is more of an aircraft grade aluminum. And so what makes it different is that it has trace amounts of silicone, copper, magnesium, and I cannot say it, but molybdenum and zinc. Whereas the 7075 is a much stronger alloy and has larger amounts of copper, magnesium, and chromium, and zinc in it. So here you have a rifle. Unlike a lot of other rifles, it has a lot of different metals in it, from the barrel to the bolt carrier to the receiver, and of course you have cast pieces for some of the components.